The fatal blow.
Oh, the way punish! The way punish!
What? No! God, please, no! No!
Today, we're discussing the worst X-rays and fatal blows in every Mortal Kombat game. From terrible hitboxes to low damage and everything in between. So make sure to post who you think has the worst X-rays in the comments down below, and without any further ado, let's get started. So of course, we're starting off with MK9, and in this game, most of the X-rays were either okay or fantastic. Some of them were full screen projectiles, so not only could they hit you from anywhere, but even if you blocked them, they were completely safe because the character themselves didn't move forward. And on top of that, some of them were unblockable, some tracked the opponent's location, you get the idea. Some of them were spectacular, and the rest were pretty much average. However, some of them were below average, like Cyrax for example. The range on this thing just isn't that good at all, especially in a game where a lot of the supers were either half screen or further. Cyrax does not have very good range at all. You essentially had to be right in the opponent's face to make this thing land, which meant using it raw as either an armored attack or a wake up was not typically a good idea. And it also meant if you randomly snared the opponent with a net, you'd have to teleport behind them and then go for the X-ray, otherwise it simply wasn't going to connect, which isn't a super big deal, but for a casual player it's an inconvenient extra step. Outside of its poor range though, it's not a terrible X-ray. You could combo into it up close, and even on airborne opponents, you just had to be careful with how you spaced it. However, at high level, Cyrax did rely on his meter to get his crazy bomb combos started, and he could also use his meter to drain the opponent's meter as well and deny them their combo breaker. So once you take all of that into consideration, it makes sense why his X-ray was somewhat lacking. And next up we have Scarlet, who had more or less the same issue. Her X-ray also had really bad range, but it also had a catch on top of that. If you didn't land the first couple of hits of this X-ray, then the overall damage would be greatly reduced. So for example, check this out. As you can see, we're only doing 27%, and that's because the first few hits did not land. So put simply, even if you did combo into this X-ray, it would not do the max damage unless you made sure that every single hit of that flip would land. And for the final nail in the coffin, if you did this X-ray raw, it was actually some of the lowest damage in the entire game, capping off at only 29%. And then finally, as an honorable mention, we have Cyber Sub-Zero. Now his X-ray wasn't exactly terrible. You could combo into it and it had decent range. The issue was you could only do it from the air, and it had some startup to it as well. And as a result, the opponent could just wait and see if Cyber Sub-Zero jumped, and if he did, then they had to watch out for the X-ray, but otherwise it was never actually a threat in the neutral. And while you could combo into it, that was easier said than done for a lot of newcomers to fighting games, because once again you could only do it in the air, which meant either a string that left you airborne or a jumping kick, things of that nature, so you couldn't be quite as creative with it when it came to combos. There were only certain circumstances where it would combo correctly. And now we're on to MKX, and in this game the X-rays were way more normalized. You no longer had any true crazy X-rays, aside from a couple that tracked the opponent's location. That was about it. So once again, that meant that most X-rays were fairly even and fell into the average category, but some of them were a bit below average, like Predator. His just doesn't have very good range, and that's all there really is to it. Now it's not nearly as bad as Cyrax, but it's a lot worse than most characters. However, keep in mind that Predator is by no means a bad character. In fact, I've considered making a video on why he's the best character in the entire game at this point in time. So let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in a video like that. Overall, he's a very strong and competent character, but his X-ray just had some pretty bad range. And next up we have Takeda, a character who absolutely deserves to be in Mortal Kombat 11. If there is a Combat Pack 3, it would be a crime if he's not in there. This new addition to Mortal Kombat is the second most popular combat kid, right behind Cassie Cage. And in fact, depending on who you ask, he may be more popular than Cassie Cage, at least at this point in time. However, when it comes to his X-ray, he has the exact same problem as Cyber Sub-Zero. It can only be done in the air. Now to be fair, it's much faster than Cyber Sub-Zero's and can be done almost instantly, and it also hits overhead. However, unlike Cyber Sub-Zero, Takeda doesn't have too many ways to launch the opponent without spending meter first, and of course you can't spend meter and then do your X-ray. In fact, not a single one of Takeda's strings launch him into the air, which meant the only way to actually land this was to do a neutral jump punch, which keep in mind is only an overhead on the way down, so on the way up it's not exactly a mix-up. And after the neutral jump punch, the only other option was to do a jumping kick or to just do it raw in the neutral as a random overhead, all of which could be okay strategies. But as you can see, Takeda is far far more limited in how he could get this X-ray off, which meant a lot of the time his best option was to just do it randomly in the neutral. And keep in mind, there were other characters who had airborne X-rays like Tanya and D'Vorah. However, Tanya had way more range on hers and also had an easier time putting the opponent in the air mid-combo. And as for D'Vorah, she could also do her X-ray on the ground, so she had the best of both worlds. You could do it on the ground or in the air, pick your poison. And this next X-ray is one of the best in the Mortal Kombat games, but I forgot to include it in my last video, so thank you to one of my viewers in the comments for pointing out how godlike this X-ray was in Mortal Kombat X. Because at first glance, it doesn't seem like much, it's just a very fast overhead, but keep in mind the katana has a low, and then after that you can just do the X-ray immediately. And are you telling me you blocked that? Look how fast that overhead was. And what makes things even more interesting is Katana was one of the few characters that didn't have a true 50-50 in this game. Her only overhead was right here, and it knocked down the opponent. It did not lead to a full combo like many other characters. In this regard, Katana was actually very similar to Liu Kang. However, of course, everything changed once she had access to her X-ray, because as you just saw, it's pretty much instant on startup. In fact, how fast is this thing? I want to check real quick. Oh my god, it's 9 frames, so that is beyond unreactable. For anyone who's not aware, 16 frames is what most people agree is reactable, so this thing is almost twice as fast as that. So unless you knew this mix-up was coming, there was no way of blocking it. You had to predict this thing, and keep in mind, MKX did not have a good online when it first came out. In fact, I think it took several months before this game finally had rollback netcode. And as a result, even if you did expect this mix-up, good luck blocking it in a game that had like full seconds of delay. I just don't see it happening. Yeah, online especially, this X-ray was a monster. But even offline at local tournaments, I would see this thing land. And keep in mind, you can also do it from the air, and it's still 9 frames on startup. And it can also hit immediately. Oh my goodness, this thing's a monster. So in summary, I agree this X-ray was definitely one of the best that NetherRealm has ever made. And now it's finally time for Mortal Kombat 11. And you know I have to mention Shao Kahn. This guy just can't catch a break in this game, because as you're about to see, his fatal blow is very slow on startup. Look at that, 25 frames, and its range isn't exactly terrible, but in a game like MK11 that has some full screen fatal blows, it's definitely lacking. And in fact, because it's so slow, that makes it all the more difficult to combo into. I've witnessed even skilled players drop Shao Kahn's fatal blow at the end of a combo. And then for the final nail in the coffin, it has a very strange hitbox. It's not uncommon for Shao Kahn to launch the opponent and then go for the fatal blow, only for it to miss completely, even though the opponent is right in front of him. I have witnessed this firsthand at tournaments, one of which was at Grand Finals, and it broke my heart. The hitbox on this thing cannot be trusted, and all of those factors combined is why Shao Kahn has one of the worst fatal blows in Mortal Kombat 11. And then next up, we had to mention Shang Tsung. Now this fatal blow is just as slow as Shao Kahn's at 25 frames, but as you can see, its range is much worse. Not only does it have poor range horizontally, but it also has terrible range in the upward direction, which can make it especially difficult to combo into. And then on top of that, it has very high damage scaling, which means even when comboed into, you're not getting very much damage from this fatal blow. And as a result, with this fatal blow, you had to keep things short and simple. Just make sure to only do things very close, otherwise again, it's going to miss because of that terrible hitbox. Or if you're very desperate for damage, then start the combo with a crushing blow and then end with fatal blow. That will give you some okay damage, but as far as fatal blow combos go, it's not very respectable. And then finally, for an honorable mention, we have Kung Lao. Now on the surface, his fatal blow does not appear bad. It has some pretty crazy range on it, and it hits several times. And as a result, you'd think that comboing into it was easy enough. However, here's the issue. In order for this fatal blow to activate, that final hit has to land. If it doesn't, you will not get the fatal blow. Even if all the first hits land, it does not matter for Kung Lao. He has to land that final kick, otherwise the fatal blow will not activate. And as a result, it's not uncommon to miss that final hit and be denied your entire fatal blow. If you don't believe me, you can ask any Kung Lao mains in the comment section. It's bound to happen eventually. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Eventually, you will land the first hit, but not the final hit, and you won't get the fatal blow. And I find that whole thing to be kind of interesting because other characters had that fixed. So for example, Aaron Black and Kano had gravity adjusted on some of their strings to make sure that every follow-up lands, but for some reason Kung Lao did not get the same treatment. If you're not careful, you can still be denied that final hit, and therefore the entire fatal blow will not activate. And that's why I had to leave Kung Lao as an honorable mention. But now it's your turn in the comments section. Please post which characters you think had the worst X-rays and fatal blow in Mortal Kombat game. And then while you're down there, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video. It really does help my channel out a ton. And finally, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you you never miss any future videos. And finally, to close out this video, a quick word from today's sponsor. Behold, my allies in the fight against demonetization. Father's Day is quickly approaching, and the Ridge wallet makes the perfect gift. Just check out the Father's Day guide on their website and find the best gear for your dad. Have your father ditch his old bulky wallet and get him a new wallet that's fit for the 21st century. There are 3 things that I absolutely love about the Ridge wallet. Number 1, it is sleek and compact. Have you ever gotten a compliment on your wallet before? Me neither, until I started using the Ridge wallet. Now I get them fairly often, and I can understand why. This one is 18 karat gold, baby. And maybe you don't want something quite as flashy. Guess what? Titanium has your back. Look at this bad boy. It is still stunning and beautiful. Reason number 2 why I love the Ridge wallet. What's up? Extremely durable, and they also have a lifetime warranty. If you somehow do damage these bad boys, they're guaranteed you get a replacement. They're gonna last you a lifetime. And then reason number 3, they have a 45-day money-back guarantee. So if you try one out and you don't like it, you can send it back, and it's no cost to you. Go ahead and get one, try it out, see if you like it. Check out the link in my video description and make sure to use code DOG, because that coupon code is gonna get you 10% off your order. So I think it's time for you to finally see what all the hype was about. Try a Ridge wallet today.